All right, now we are going to move on, and this is something that I have felt like it's a blind spot for us here at the Growl, and really like through years of podcasting that I've done, I still can't believe that I'm going to say that this is the first time that I'm welcoming from CBS Sports John Breech onto the show. John, what's up?
Paul, thanks for having me, man. Look, I was back listening to you in the days of Hear the Podcast Growling.
Yeah.
And, this was the crossover. This is Ninja Turtles meeting the Power Rangers. This is what people wanted.
I know. I'm so mad. Like, we go to whether, back in the day, we actually, I was moonlighting at the Super Bowl in Indianapolis and doing stuff for CBS before I ever even entered the Cincinnati kind of Inquirer athletic world. And we kind of met up there. And then as it went on, you were there at CBS. Now, all those like functions, I would inevitably wait to see you so we could talk a little bit of Bengals, because you were always ready to talk Bengals because you're a Cincinnati guy. And you are not just any Cincinnati guy. You are the son of the great Jim Breech, which I am just, honored to be having you here and to talk about the Ring of Honor here with you a little bit today.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, hey, I am in Cincinnati right now. A lot of people don't know that I haven't publicized it. I used to live in Nashville. I am living in Cincinnati. We're practically neighbors now. Paul, I should have just gone to your house and done this. Why am I in my own studio?
We should have done it from one of the tap rooms here in town. We should have just gone to a local brewery, the earliest one that opens. We just get started immediately. I love the idea of this. But here's what I want to start. You are obviously going to be an advocate for your dad for the Ring of Honor, and I think everybody's under recognition of what that whole process is. I'm happy that we're able to talk about it. Like I'm happy that the Ring of Honor is here and we're able to have these debates to give the proper honor to all of these guys that have been on this list this whole time. I'm curious, what's it like to be the son of or a family member of someone who is on this ballot and kind of going through this process?
So let me just say real quick, look, I talk to my dad all the time. So when the Bengals started doing this, I think it was 2021, and the fact that he was on the initial nominee list, that was huge. That's all you could be happy with. There was no thought that he would be in first ballot. It was just so cool for him to be nominated. I know he was thrilled, absolutely thrilled with that. And as the years go by, I just saw him 4th of July weekend, and we kind of talked about it a little. And I had told him if I had a vote, this would have been the first year where I even considered voting for him. I think that the fans have done a good job of getting the names in that absolutely deserve to be in. Ken Riley and Ken Anderson were no-brainers that first year. Boomer Esiason, Ocho Cinco, those guys had to get in. So there were a long list of names. Like you said, Paul, it took forever for this team to get this Ring of Honor going. So you're already behind the 8 ball when you start. So I think it is good that they're putting in 2 guys at a time. So now that you have Willie Anderson, Isaac Curtis, Tim Crum right out, those are guys are in. Now this is where it gets interesting. The Bengals haven't added any new nominees. I think they're kind of slowly waiting for everyone to get in. So I'm fine with where my dad is. If he got in this year, that would be great. I think next year, if you had asked me in year 1 where I thought he was going to get in just based on the nominee list, year 6 would have been my prediction. And that's next offseason. So if he's not in this year, that's okay. If he's not in next year, I'll be sad.
Well, they're going to reevaluate the process. This was kind of the wording that was put out with the last time, which I think is interesting because I feel like we all are under the understanding like these guys are going to get in and should get in. And so, like, if you're looking at it from your perspective, where would you start now with reevaluating the process? And would it diminish anything if they just came out and be like, look, we all admit these guys need to get in. We're going to put them all in next year. We're going to clear the deck because it's been too long. That we waited too long. All of these guys have deserved to be in decades ago, but we didn't have a Ring of Honor then. Well, that wouldn't diminish anything from your perspective. Somebody who wants this for your dad, obviously.
Yeah, I don't think any of the players going in. Obviously you have that Ring of Honor game, and if you have 6 players out in the field being honored, maybe they feel diminished, but I don't think they would. I think everyone would actually be thrilled with that. And if the Bengals did go that route, if you do that, you let everyone in, and then after that, you make it a 1-player-a-year thing. You got through that initial run-in of candidates, And then now I don't think you're at a spot where you need to put in 2 players a year. So I think part of the evaluation will be, how do we add more nominees, which hasn't really been done. And then do we need to keep putting in 2 players per year? And also the fan voting is interesting, because you look at the other Ring of Honors, or Team Hall of Fames around the NFL. Most teams don't have the fans vote. I mean, you look at the New England Patriots. They have the media. They have former players. They have people that are handpicked by the Patriots who kind of pick who are going to be the nominees and eventual inductees into that Patriots Hall of Fame. Same thing with the Packers and really any other team. I think the Bengals are the only team that leaves it up to a full fan vote. And I am glad the fans have a say. I think they should have a say, because the fans are what make all of this work. So, but giving 100% fan vote, I wouldn't be surprised if that's reassessed, even though, have the fan vote count as 50%, whatever, because I do think the fans should have a say.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I think we all want to see all those guys on that list get up there. They all deserve it. Everybody that is on that list deserves to have their name and their moment and their weekend for their friends and their family. And I certainly hope that we can see you out there on the field when the jacket gets put over your dad's shoulder.
And real quick, Paul, do let me say, if fans, obviously this is open to season ticket holders, if you are voting, I see a lot of people, a lot of voters now, they're under 35. They weren't around when Max Montoya was playing, or David Fulcher, or James Brooks, or even my dad. So it's kind of, you're really just looking at the stats that you see on Pro Football Reference, or stats you hear on a podcast, like, Jim Breech was this kind of kicker back in the day. Look, he was one of the most clutch kickers of his generation. You look at the top 30 most accurate kickers in playoff history, he is on that list. He is one of only 3 kickers from his generation on that list. Everybody else is from the more modern generation. He's got the most overtime field goals in NFL history without a miss. So I think the one thing that really makes me proud is that he always came up clutch for the Bengals. I think when you look at other teams around the NFL, when you ask them a memory about a kicker, it's a "what have you done for me lately" world. It's almost always a miss. And so you ask a Bengals fan what they remember about my dad, and very few of them would mention a big game miss, because I don't think there were any.
You can't find them. I want to shift to the current team. I like talking to you about the Bengals because you have obviously a unique pulse on them from growing up here, being around the team, and an understanding of where they fit in sort of the national landscape, which is unique. And not everybody totally has an understanding of that. Let me, where do you think the national view of the Bengals currently maybe gets it wrong when you see a lot of stuff that's out there about them? Is there something that always kind of gets you going or gets you up on the soapbox a little bit?
Well, okay, look, we're gonna the storyline that they're frugal is never going to die, and I think everything that's said about the Bengals, there's at least a kernel of truth to it. So it's hard to just kind of shut anything down. But it's just when they don't spend money, it's like they just gave Joe Burrow a huge extension, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and they haven't gotten the extension done with Trey Hendrickson. But it's all these little things. And because the Bengals have a track record of, I guess, penny pinching over the years, or not being able to, the scouting, the front office, not having enough scouts, and not being good in the draft. And certainly, things like that apply to every team. No team hits home runs every year in the NFL draft, even the teams with the largest scouting departments. So there's a lot of negatives, certainly, and I understand why they are there. But I do think because the Bengals are the Bengals, it gets overblown a little bit.
Yeah, and you're right. It's not going away. It's just not going to go away. This is going to be their reputation because people are never going to be like, you know what, let's take some time to really evaluate their recent finances. None of the people don't view it that way. People aren't going to do that, not on a broad perspective. And I think you're right. Locally, I think people maybe have a different view of how it goes. We did this franchise state of the franchise survey, and it's amazing how on the ledge Bengals fans are. Like, they are just we track it over years, and you just see they have gone to the dark place of, oh no, I think we might be ruining Joe Burrow, right? Like, it feels like where they're at. One of the questions on it that stood out the most, and we talked about this earlier on the show, I'll pose to you. On a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the most confident, what's your confidence level? The Bengals are headed in the right direction.
It's a 3. I mean, it's right in the middle because as long as Joe Burrow's your quarterback, you are in a Super Bowl window. You're going to be a contender. You can win games. We already know that. And they've proven they'll go out and get their star players, signed long-term contracts, but then you have to totally rebuild the defense. And that means drafting intelligently. That means developing the smart guys. Obviously, Jesse Bates is a good example of a guy who never should have been able to walk out the door. You want to if you draft someone, the cheapest way to do it is to give them that extension. Don't battle for it in free agency. Don't think that you can replace them so easily. And so I think sometimes the Bengals have a hard time with that. But look, it's all about Joe Burrow. This franchise is in good hands. I do think it was really interesting back in the Super Bowl when they went in 2021 and Carson Palmer was doing that round of interviews and just kind of saying, I kind of feel like this is going where it went with me. We all know how it ended with Carson Palmer. And at the time, everybody was just saying, that's absolutely ridiculous, man. You're just bitter because things didn't end well with you. And now here we are 4 years later. And again, it's that kernel of truth thing where, all right, maybe a little bit of what he said is accurate because Joe Burrow clearly, you don't go out and call out the team you're playing for unless you're unhappy about something like Joe Burrow did at Super Bowl week. That's all he was doing. You got to get these guys signed. And he's the only guy that can really voice that because he's the franchise guy, and he did it. So it really felt like a little bit of frustration on his end. But as long as he's under contract long-term, I feel good about this. This team could eventually win a Super Bowl.
Yeah. And the difference, I think, between that, that changed because I thought you would talk a lot about the Carson Palmer timeline here and that you could see it happening, but it felt like they kind of deleted it with the Jamar and T contracts because they listened to Joe. They never really listened to Carson, I guess, except maybe when Terrell Owens showed up. But they listened to Joe and gave Joe the power. They empowered Burrow to be assistant general manager Burrow, GM Joe. And when they did that, I think it sort of was what Carson would have liked to have seen is just listen to what we have to say, listen to the things that we feel like we need. And I think the hope is that they got rid of that, but it's the other stuff. It's the stuff on the margins that Carson was also talking about that I do think does still exist in some extent.
Well, right. I mean, look at the NFLPA survey where the Bengals got an F in how they treat families for the 4th straight year or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so it's little simple things like that. Like after you got that first F, why not strive to improve that right away so that you don't have this reputation? And so I think that's just an example of the little things that are out there. That seems like an easy thing to improve. So if there is this bad perception of the team that is fixable, then why not fix it? I understand that some things are not quickly fixed, but it's just little things like that they let float around.
Totally agree. You had something up recently. It was a part of one of the stories that you had up about did the Steelers get better this offseason was kind of the question. And I haven't really had a chance to. I was on vacation. I didn't really have a chance to talk about the Minka trade and what's gone on there. Did the Steelers get better? Like, where do you view them in the AFC North? Or are they just kind of this same team? And I might offend our good friend Ryan Wilson here. That's just going to continue middling and losing in the playoffs.
It's crazy because we're on Twitter. Twitter's where you get the pulse of every fan base. And I saw a lot of AFC North, Ravens and Bengals fans really that felt good about the Jalen Ramsey trade, that maybe the Steelers didn't get better. And maybe long-term they didn't, but I do think that for this year, Jalen Ramsey is still a top corner. Sure, he's north of 30, and he's probably not going to be in his prime much longer, but I don't think we're going to see a steep drop-off from him in 2025. So now they have one of the top cover corners. Now you have Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth. So now you have 2 top tight ends. And Aaron Rodgers, look, we can argue about what Aaron Rodgers is right now. He's certainly not anywhere what he was during his prime, but I do think he's a step up from both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. And the Steelers went to the playoffs last year with those 2 quarterbacks. So I don't think this team got worse. And as long as they get the TJ Watt situation figured out, I think they're a threat to win the AFC, maybe not win. I think they're a threat to get to the playoffs again. I think the Bengals and Ravens are better than from a roster standpoint. But man, I don't sleep on the Steelers. I think a lot of people are doing that just because they have a 41-year-old quarterback.
As someone who was on living the life on the Aaron Rodgers hype train last year for the Jets, I was making predictions that I've had to live with. Okay. And I've had to eat for a year. I take it personal now. I'm just over betting on Aaron Rodgers becoming somebody that can lead a team anymore. And that's my, and I know from, all the time we've talked to Joe Burrow and the Bengals coaches, losing Minka Fitzpatrick is massive. He was who they would game plan for. He was who they would worry about when they played the Steelers defensively. He was always the one that could make the play that they knew could ruin their game. I think anytime you're trading away Minka Fitzpatrick, I have a hard time viewing it as a major improvement, just specifically on what I know about how the Bengals play the Steelers. And so now Jalen Ramsey, I don't know. I don't know how what level he's going to continue to play at. You're right. They're interesting. I'll give them that. They're interesting, but I don't know if they're different. And I'm very confused by where they are actually at. Maybe they just end up in the same spot.
Paul, the one thing I will say to trading away Minka Fitzpatrick is obviously a top safety, but Mike Tomlin has proven over 17 years that he is one of the smartest defensive coaches in the NFL. And if one of the smartest defensive coaches is willing to give away Minka Fitzpatrick, look, there's a reason for that. And I think he wouldn't do that unless he had a good plan B in place. Now, whatever that plan B is, someone on the roster, maybe they trade for someone, maybe they go out and sign Justin Simmons. I don't know what the plan B is, but Mike Tomlin doesn't make this move with a defensive star unless he's absolutely comfortable making it.
I have one last question here before I let you go. On your bio line, you still on CBS, you still have he's believed to be one of only 3 people in the world who thinks that Andy Dalton will win a playoff game someday. He's on your CBS bio. Is this still true?
Andy, look, I'll tell you that bio line, I think it says I still live in San Diego. I think we lost the password we need to log in to update the bio lines. I think that is the problem.
No, stand up and say it again. He's going to do one more run for Andy.
But you know what? Look, he did. Every year you think Andy Dalton's done, and he ends up starting. Last year, Bryce Young gets benched, and wait, it's Andy Dalton's music. He's going to be starting some games. And he went out there, and the first game back, it's like, man, that's Andy Dalton from the 2013 or 2015 version of the Bengals. And if Andy Dalton retires without ever winning a playoff game, I will actually be sad because, look, Was he a great quarterback? No, he was a mid-range quarterback his entire career, lumped somewhere between 14 and 18, maybe top 8 in 2015. But for the most part, that's what he was. He was who he was. But the fact that he was a smart quarterback, he was an easy guy to root for. Andrew Gregory Dalton, I hope you win a playoff game, even if you were on the bench holding a clipboard. I know that would mean the Carolina Panthers getting the playoffs, so it is an absolute long shot, but I might have to log on to my BetMGM account and make a Panthers bet just so I can win some money if Andy Dalton gets a playoff win this year.
I think you can extrapolate it out. If Bryce Young wins a playoff game, Andy Dalton gets some portion of that credit for helping a young quarterback along, being the perfect guy to have there in a really difficult situation. I think he gets partial credit, even if it's Bryce Young that leads them. But Andy is one of the absolute, not nicest players, not nicest quarterbacks, nicest humans you will ever encounter in your entire life. You have to root for Andy Dalton. That's just the rule, or you're the bad guy. That's all there is to it. Okay. I want to thank you. First of all, welcome back to Cincinnati. You've done what all Cincinnatians do in return. And so it's great to have you back here in the city. And there's only really one way that you can properly welcome somebody back to Cincinnati. And because coming back is what we do. And that is I declare you, by all the glory that you've given to the Growler community on this segment, Graders worthy. We're shipping Graders to you, Mr. Breech. It will show up on your front door, all nice and cold and freezer ready, with 6 flavors of your choosing. You're just going to tell me your 6 flavor. Do you have a flavor? You had to come up a Graders guy. Do you have like a flavor? Do you just go right for the black raspberry chip? Do you just like kind of go hit the home run immediately?
Paul, let me tell you, I've been here a week. I've already been to Graders twice. The second day we were here, my 5-year-old's like, I want ice cream. I was like, well, we're going to Graders
Yeah,
because
we are.
she's lived in Nashville her whole entire life. They don't have Graders in Nashville. I am a mocha chip guy. I got mocha chip both times. I love mocha chip. I know black raspberry chip's the all-time classic. She is a vanilla. She just only eats vanilla. It's the only kind of ice cream she likes, but she ate it all. She never eats it all. Graders is delicious, man. That's how you bribe people. That's a great
That's
way.
what we're doing. That's what we're doing. It will show up at your front door here, and I dub you Graders worthy for this appearance. Awesome stuff. I'm glad we finally did this, and we're going to do it much more and maybe in person now that you're here in the city with us again. So I'm excited about that. And make sure you're following John on Twitter everywhere, and that you get all of your information on the NFL and on CBS because he is crushing it over there as always. Thanks, buddy. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, man.